In today's video, I'm going to teach you how to create this beautiful wave design, and best of all, we're doing it in only 4 colors. In your circle, in your classroom, don't forget to download the project files underneath this video, and if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to click the link in the description to check out the EL software. Let's get started. Step 1 is to import our image. Now I'm going to click on my backdrop up here on my toolbar, and I'm going to select load backdrop. Now I'm just going to go to the folder where I have my design. Here we go, ocean waves, and I'm going to click open to bring in that design. Next, we want to resize the file, so I'm going to click back on my backdrop, and instead of load backdrop, I'm just going to click select backdrop. Now my image is now highlighted, so I'm going to right click on it and select properties so we can change the size of the image. If you press M on your keyboard, you can switch between millimeters and inches. You can also change it up here where it says metric to imperial, and you can see that this design is currently at 11.25 inches and 3.27 inches in height. I think that's a little too wide, and my goal for this design was to do it on a 5 inches by 7 inch hoop. So I'm going to go to my width and I'm going to put 6.5 inches in width so that we can digitize this width of the design. Perfect. Now we can see that the height is 1.89, which to me, that's perfect. I'm going to press M on my keyboard once again to change the measuring tool. And now we can see 48 and 165. Now to pan around, all you want to do is hold spacebar so that you can pan around your workspace, and you can zoom in and out using your scroll wheel, as well as up here, you can choose 1 to 1, 1 to 3, and 1 to 6, as well as fit screen and fit selection. So let's do 1 to 1 for now, and I'm just going to disable the grid so that I can see the image. Now the reason I made this design 6.5 inches in width is because I want to add a border, and I'm going to create the border first so I can use it as a pathing for my connections. So let's take care of that. I'm going to click on my brush and let's select our steel. Now under our steel, we have our density at 0.4 millimeters, so that's perfect. And our width, we're going to change it possibly to maybe 3 millimeters. That should be more than enough. And instead of having the input as our fast draw, we are going to switch it to a shape, and I'm going to select a square. So now that I have those settings selected, let me just pick a color. I'm going to press this red around here, and I'm going to click and drag to create my square. So we're just going to go from one end to the other and then let go. As I zoom out, you can see that it's a little bit too squarish and we need to turn it into a rectangle. So the next step is to grab our select tool up here on our toolbars, or we can press A on our keyboard. I'm going to click on the square and I'm going to bring it down from up here, and I'm going to bring it up from down here by click and holding and then drag right there. Now let's do fit screen, and I think that looks pretty good. But you know what? 3 millimeters may not be enough. I think I may want it to be just a little bit thicker. So let's go on our properties, and under our stitch width, we're gonna switch it to 4 millimeters. Now that looks really nice. I like the width of it, and it looks like an awesome frame. So this is what we're going to use as our boundary box to create this art. Now let's go to our sequence view, and you can go to the sequence view at the top right, highlight your sequence view, and you can see that's where our steel path is. I'm just going to select it, and I'm going to lock the path so that I no longer have access to edit it. I don't want to accidentally move the rectangle, so now there's no way for us to highlight it, for us to use it whatsoever. Now we can get started with the insides of the design. So next, what we're going to do is go under our recipes, because right now we have a canvas recipe, which means that it has certain push and pull compensations as well as underlays, and I don't want it to have either of those. So I'm just gonna go to change my recipe, and I'm going to select no recipe. Now make sure to unclick the apply to existing paths, because if you leave this on, the recipes will also be disabled on the rectangle that we just made. And I want to keep those underlays and push and pull compensation on this shape that we created. So I'm pressing OK, and you can see that now it should say no recipe down here, and moving forward the shapes that we create will have no underlays or push and pull compensation. I think that the first thing that I want to do for this design is create the white over here. We can do all of these white highlights. You can also choose the shadows, but I find that it's easiest when we create the highlights first. So let's take care of doing some of those. Under our widget tool, I'm going to switch to my classic satin because I want to create a couple of these classic shapes. And for my density, we currently have it at 0.4. I'm probably gonna switch this to 0.6 millimeters. And to make it easier on you guys to see, I'm going to switch the color to a green. It normally would be white, but we're gonna do green. Now on our keyboard, we can press 1 to bring the run tool and 2 to bring the classic satin. If you click on brush, you can see run right here, which is 1, and then classic satin, which is 2 right here. We're going to be switching back and forth so that we can make connections on the whole design and avoid having to create a bunch of jumps and trims. Now I'm going to go zoom in 1/6 so that I can zoom in pretty big. I see that that's a little too much, so let's go 1/3 and let's get started somewhere here on the left. Now I'm going to press 2 on my keyboard so that I can bring up my classic satin. I've already selected my color, which I'm going to change after, and left clicking, I'm going to put my first node in. Now you can see a box that says length 2.2 millimeters. My goal is that the length and the width, which you'll see in a minute, is at least 1 millimeter so that we can get super clean embroidery designs. So here it's 2.2 millimeters. So I'm going to left click once again. You can see I did my point and my counterpoint. I'm going to do another one, point. Now the width 2.4, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, and point, and counterpoint. Now I'm going to press enter just to show you what I did. I created a point and a counterpoint, which means that I'm creating the angle and the width of the shape. That's why classic satin is so good, because it allows us to create these awesome complex shapes really fast. So now I'm going to press 1 on my keyboard to switch to my run tool, and you can see that on my widget, now the brush is selected, the run brush. Now I just want to make sure that on my input, I have it set to fast draw. So I'm switching to my fast draw, and I'm going to left click to put my first point. And let's go to this one right here, and I'm going to press left click again and press enter. We've just created a connection like the subway system that I've explained before, where now this shape that we made, which is the highlight, will start stitching from somewhere here or even down here. It will probably start and stop on this end, and instead of trimming, it's going to use that run stitch to connect to the next shape that we're going to create. So now let's press number 2 on our keyboard to bring back the classic satin, and let's do point. So I'm putting my first point down by left clicking, and then counterpoint, point by left clicking, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, and I'm just left click, left click, left click, left click, left click, left click, and I'm just going to finish somewhere around there. Once I'm satisfied with the shape that I've created, I'm going to press enter, and you can see once again it created those stitches. But I wanted to come back through the outline that we created, the border. So now I'm going to press 1 on my keyboard once again to bring the run tool. Let's just go back 1/3 to make sure that I'm not too zoomed in. And now I'm going to left click right here to put my first point down, and left click once again on this side to put my second point, and press enter. You can see that it automatically connected this shape to the run tool thanks to the smart join, which we automatically have enabled. So there's only one trim so far, which is the little scissor over here. If you do not see those scissors, no problem. All you have to do is go to the top left and make sure that you have your view commands enabled. So press the 3 dots, view commands, view entry and exit, and that will be pretty much set for you to see those scissors as well as your start and stop. Holding spacebar to pan around, let's go to the next one, and this is the wave right here. So I'm going to press 2 on my keyboard once again, and I'm going to do left click to do my first point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint. Now you could press right click if you wanted to create curve points, but at this stage, at this size of the satin stitch, I really don't think it's worth it creating any curve points, and it is just a lot faster for us to do left clicks all the way around the shape. So here we go. I did a left click all around and I'm pretty satisfied with that shape. If anything, and if you don't like what you created, you can press backspace on your keyboard to delete one point at a time. So here we go. I'm just going to delete one and just rewind a minute, just like that. And now I can press enter once I'm satisfied with the shape and press enter. There we go. Now you see the scissors are over here at the left, which means that that's where the design is going to trim. But I don't really want it to do that. So I'm going to press 1 on my keyboard. You can see I have the run tool, and I'm going to left click to put my first point down and left click to put my second point down, and I'm going to press enter. Now those scissors are gone because of smart join. The program decided, hey, you want to continue from here to this end, so now there's only one trim, and that is perfect. Let's press number 2 on our keyboard, and we're gonna do the same thing: point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, and I'm just gonna go around this whole shape, doing my best to create it as close as I can to match the wave to make it look really, really nice. And you can still hold spacebar so you can pan around even while you're editing your shape, which saves you a lot of time from having to press enter and let go of that shape which you're currently creating. So here we go. I think I might just exaggerate it all the way there. You know what? No, let's finish right here. So I'm going to press enter to create that shape right there. I'm pretty happy with it. But if you find, like, for example, that there are certain parts that you didn't like that you created, all you have to do is go to your shape edit, click on inclination edit, and shape edit is up here on your toolbar. We're gonna click inclination edit, select that shape, and we can change the nodes which we created, the inclination points, like so. I'm just gonna make sure that I change them ever so slightly to match more of the flow of the wave. So that looks nice. I think I'm happy with that. So I'm going to press select to exit that setting, and now we can continue. I'm going to press 1 on my keyboard once again to start right here. Oh, and by the way, sometimes you may see this red circle. That means that the snap to anchors is enabled. This is a very important thing to watch out for, because if you create your next shape while the snap to anchors is enabled and you click on that next circle, it means that you will continue creating under that same run, and we don't want to do that. So for now, I'm just going to disable that setting up here. That way I can ensure that I'm not creating under that same shape. So now I can click close to it, there we go, or even on top of it, and I'm left clicking, then left clicking once again to create my second one and press enter. Now, once again, Smart Join comes to the rescue because it took care of creating the proper start and stop. Let's press number 2 on our keyboard, and I'm going to left click, and then just start left clicking to create the next shape. I know there isn't a lot of white here, but I want to ensure that I'm adding a lot of these details, so I'm just left clicking all around. Here we go. What do I want to do next? I think there is this shape right here which looks really nice, so let's connect, because we are going to want to make sure that we can connect back to this side of the border. So let's press number 1 on our keyboard, and I'm going to make an invisible connection underneath this wave right here. So I'm pressing left click to create that connection, then I'm going to press enter. And now let's do the shape first. So left click, utilizing the classic satin, point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint. And we're just going to create this shape over here. This is very nice, perfect. I think I'll stop right there. Awesome. And then now I can kind of create a couple of these waves right here. So utilizing the classic satin, I'm just going to do point, counterpoint, and point, counterpoint. And one more, like so. Perfect. Everything so far in the shape is connecting, so that's perfect. Let's do point, counterpoint once again. So left click, and now I can finish this shape all the way to the end by doing point, counterpoint from the left to right without having to trim. and then us having to jump from this section if we had created that at the end. This is something that takes practice, by the way, guys. It's a lot to do with mapping your designs just so that you avoid having to trim so much. But even if you end up, you know, getting yourself stuck to this area and you have to trim a little bit, that's fine. It's all about the practice. So you can see we created this whole design so far without having to trim at all. And now we're on this end, so we're going to press 1 on our keyboard. We're going to do left click and left click so that we can create more of that connection. Now let's create these big waves. So I'm going to left click, and now it looks like the angle is changing a little bit. Let's just left click, and create a couple of those. By the way, I am using a mouse and keyboard, so it does take a little bit of practice to go back and forth with a mouse, but make sure to go slow, make sure to understand the tool, and just keep practicing like so. Point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint. Now here I'm just kind of creating a bunch of random shapes because this is the ocean after all, so we're just kind of creating a bunch of little random waves like so, and I'm just making a bunch of shapes. Not so worried about my start and stop because again, Smart Join just takes care of all of that. And there we go, we created a few. So here I'm just gonna go to this end. I can see that there is a little bit of highlights on this one, so I'm just gonna create point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, and point, counterpoint like so, just to create this end right here. And now let's do point, counterpoint to finalize this one over here. And you can even randomize it a lot. You can make it as random as you want or as uniform as you'd like. Here we go. I will stop right there. And then I'm going to almost make this one a little bit more at an angle so it gets thinner. Let's keep going through this small shape right here. Again, just making sure that I do at least 1 millimeter. And I believe that this is pretty much the end. So at this point, we can either finish right here, but I think that I want to add some extra details. So let's just take advantage of using the run tool, and I'm going to connect it like so by just putting a few points down there. Remember that when you zoom in, you don't want to be doing too many of them. So let's see, can we add a couple more details? I think we can. So I'm going to press left click from this because that's where the trim is happening. I'm going to press left click again over here. And now I'm just going to make a couple of zigzag waves that are a little bit more random just to this part of the design. And did I want to make all of that? Maybe. No, I think I'll just finish right there. So that's where it'll end like so. And I think we are now good on the highlights. So let's go to our sequence view. You can see the deep green. These are all of the shapes that we created. So let's highlight all of it. And I'm just gonna go and switch this to the white. Perfect. You can see it started somewhere over here. So that's where the color changes. It's going to create this wave, then connect utilizing the run tool that we made. And we only have one trim so far on the whole design of the color, which is right there. Now that we're done using the white, let's highlight all of it and let's bring it to the top. So we're going to move it first because remember, we want to make sure that everything that we are connecting and we're digitizing is going to go underneath the border. I always try my best whenever I'm creating designs to not go past the middle of this shape right here. So that's kind of like my limit that I have in mind whenever I'm digitizing. There we go. We have the white now done. Let's take care of the darkest spots of this design. And I believe that will be this dark navy blue. So for that, we are going to disable the Smart Join for now because I'm going to be utilizing mostly just the run tool. And you can see it's right here, run. Let's just go to our stitch length and maybe I'll switch this to 3.5 millimeters. That should be more than enough. Now let's grab a nice color. I'll make it super easy for you guys to see once again by selecting maybe another green. Perfect. And let's get started. I'm going to do 1/3. We can start from this end once again, and I'm going to left click, then left click once again because I'm doing point counterpoint, left click, left click, left click, left click, and I'm just doing the little waves that you can see, those little details. Now, the more you're zoomed in, the more you want to watch out to not overdo this. As you can see, this area barely has any navy blue streaks, so I'm not gonna be overdoing it by putting so many of them down just yet. We are going to try and replicate whatever the design is showing us. So thanks to the border once again, if I want to finish this little shape right here, I can actually come back from this part of the border and create this next shape like so. So I'm going to left click, left click, left click to start creating this one. And I think for now, I only want one path. Now I have this awesome shape right here that I'm going to utilize to create the shape right here. So we're going to create a couple. And now I can go and do this next one over here. And I'm just going back and forth like so. Now I'm going to go all the way down here and finish this one like so. And I'm just left clicking. If I see that it's getting a little bit darker, maybe I'll add a couple more, but I think for now we're okay. So let's keep going this way. Now, this is why I wanted to create the white satin outlines first, because we have this whole other area to create. So I can use the tunnel idea or the subway system idea to go underneath this white outline, and we won't be able to see that stitch that we create underneath. So here we go. I'm just going to continue by left clicking, start creating a couple of these streaks and go back and forth by left clicking. Some will have more, some will have less, and just going around. If you want to start curving them, maybe you can add a couple of points back and forth, but I'm pretty happy with this right now. I don't want to be overdoing this because it's the stitch points. I prefer that it is a little bit of a lighter look to it because we're going to mix another blue on top of it. So here I realize there's not a lot of curves, so I'm going to backspace a little bit just to create more of a flat look. Going back and forth, there you go. And finish somewhere around here. Perfect. Now I'm going to press enter and show you what that looks like. If we zoom out, now it's green, so it looks a little bit weird. It's a little hard to imagine that this is the darker part of the waves. But remember, we have the trim over here, so we must continue through this area, which is fine because now we can go and create the shape right here. So I'm left clicking super close to it, and I'm just going to create the shape right there. So let's go and create the shape back and forth. I am 300% in, so I'm not super worried. And this is going to be another blue, which we're adding. So I don't think I need to continue down this way unless I want to create some of these over here, just random waves. Again, this is a very artistic design, so it's really up to you how much you want to do in terms of the waves, darkness, the shadows, and the highlights. So I press enter. I just want to zoom out a little bit to see where I am on this design. And you know what? Let's tackle this side of the design first. So I'm going to zoom in 300%. And remember, that's where I trim. So I want to continue as close as I can so we avoid having to create a trim, and we can just continue working under that same stitch. So let's keep going, pressing back and forth. If I see that it starts curving, maybe I'll add an extra point like so. And let's go back and forth like this. 1, 2. Now I do realize that I'm doing kind of a lot of spacing, whereas in reality the painting has more of a really dark blue, but we're gonna do a couple of effects to take care of that in just a second. For now, we're trying to take care of all of these tiny details around the area, so I'm just filling it up more manually and create those random looks of the waves. So here we go. I'm going back and forth. Maybe I'll move this over here so it's easier for you guys to see. Back and forth, just go like so, and just start putting some points down. Now, as you can see, I am not going overboard with the points that I'm putting down. They are still very spaced out. So just want to watch out that when you're doing this, you do not go overboard with your stitch points, because then you can start creating a bulletproof design and it stops looking really nice on the embroidery. So I'm going to press enter right there, zoom out a little bit, and you can see those are the stitches that I've created, which I think look pretty awesome. Going back to 300, let's take care of this over here. and I'm going to press left click to create those stitches. Now I'm using the white outline once again to connect to the next shape, because this is gonna go underneath the white, so you won't even be able to see that. It is so awesome to plan out your designs, and that's why I like utilizing a lot of the satins to ensure that I can use it as a little tunnel for my shapes afterwards. Now here we go. I just put a couple of points down. Maybe I'll do a couple over here as well. Let's go back and forth, and let's finish somewhere around here. Perfect. Let's actually go all the way to the end, like so, and we can just create these over here. We're going back and forth, like so, adding a few points. Remember that I took out my smart join because I don't want the smart join to automatically change the start and stop. So for now, we just have that disabled, and we can create more of these manual stitches without the stitches potentially changing the stop and adding more threads. So here we go. We're going to press enter, and now we have a lot of these shapes done. I think the general area is pretty good. Now let's take care of that other effect that I told you I was going to do. But before we bring up smart join once again, I am going to create just one more stitch right here, because I don't want the smart join to change any of the previous stitches that we created. So when I made this stitch right here, the smart join will only attach the next shape that I'm creating to this one right here, and it'll avoid from changing all of this work that we just created. If it sounds a little bit confusing, don't worry, we are working on improving constantly the features of smart join, but for now all you have to do is create one more shape. That way the settings of the previous wrench stitches that you created won't be changed. So now we're done. We're going to press 2 on our keyboard to bring back our classic satin, and on our density, instead of 0.6, I'm going to make it 1 millimeter. So here we go. Let's go to smart join and enable that now. And I'm going to press left click. So put my first inclination point, then left click, left click, left click, because we're going to start putting our inclination points down. And I'm just going to go around the darkest areas of the design, like so. So left clicking to put a couple of those down, then I can press enter. Perfect. And you can see that it didn't change any of the settings of the run stitches. So that's really good, because we don't want that to happen. Here we go. That's where the stitch is stopping, but I wanted to go somewhere around here. So I'm just going to click and create these next shapes around this area. Not gonna overdo it too much, but regardless, it is only 1 millimeter, so it's pretty spaced out when it comes to density now. And I'm just going to create a few of these stitches. Here you can see there are 2 trims, and if it's a little hard to see, let me just make the backdrop a little bit lighter. Just gonna turn down the opacity to 50, maybe 75%. There are 2 trims right here. We don't want that, and I'm going to show you how to fix that really quickly. Under my shape edit, I'm just going to click path edit, and I'm going to select that path that we created. So that's the satin, and I'm just going to bring this a little bit closer to the other shape. So you can see right there, I'm going to bring it closer. Let's bring it a little bit closer to ensure that there's no trims. There we go. So there's only 1 trim so far on this whole design, as opposed to having 2 trims. When using the smart join, if you ever create shapes that are too spaced apart, it will just create a trim. All you have to do is put it closer to the other shape, and it'll fix it up. Now we have most of the dark parts done on our design, but let's just press number 1 to finish this part up here. So I'm pressing number 1. I'm going to make sure I select somewhere here, because that's where I want it to connect. And let's utilize the power of the border over here to go somewhere around this area, and now I can press enter. I'm using that to connect so that we have no trims once again. Now let's press number 2 on our keyboard, and the density, instead of being 1 millimeter, let's switch it to 0.6. So I'm going to press 0.6, left click to do at least 1 millimeter, and then left click to do at least 1 millimeter. Perfect. Now here we go. There is no connection, but we do have the white highlight right here, which means that we can press 1 and we can create a couple of points down here to connect to the next step. And now here we go. I'm going to press 2 once again, and let's do left click, left click. Let's do left click and left click. And I'm going to press enter, left click, left click, left click, and left click, just to create this little, shape or this little detail. And then the last one, left click to create point, counterpoint. And I'm just creating these widths all around 1.4 millimeters. Perfect. And I can press enter all the way back there. Now, as I zoom out, you can see it still looks super weird because it is the color green, but because we're done with creating this whole shape, all I have to do is go under my sequence view. I'm going to highlight that green that I created, and I'm going to switch it to a ultramarine dark blue, and I can go and create it to move first. Perfect. So now it's created underneath the white, and that looks pretty awesome. Cool. So now let's take care of the second darkest blue, which is this one right here. And at this point, it's going to be super simple. We've already taken care of the darkest parts. So now my goal is going to be just to add those extra effects. I'm going to switch back to my run tool because I want the second darkest blue to look more of a hand stitch. So I'm just going to stick to the run tool, and I am going to disable the smart join because I want to be able to control where my start and stop of my stitches and to avoid potentially adding extra stitches that we don't need. So let's get started. Here we go. I'm going to go somewhere around the left. Let's make sure I'm at 1/3. Is there a lot of dark spots here? None at all. So you know what? Let's just do a couple of points so that we can run up. And let me change the color before I start making it the same blue. Let's pick the second darkest blue. That'll be maybe 48, somewhere down here. And you know what? Let's just make it green so it's easier for you guys to see. I'm just going to add a couple of these points ever so slightly. I am not even going to go overboard with them, but I am adding this little, like, almost grading texture by creating these points just randomly. It is going to be so faint, but I think it'll look really, really nice to add to the texture of this design. You can see the waves are going around, and we'll add a couple more as well. Here we go. I'm adding a few of these points like so. If I see that some areas are darker, like this area right here, then I will start adding a couple more. Remember, I'm not overdoing it. I am adding more, but I'm still spacing them out enough to where there won't be any bulletproof style of design. So there we go, adding a couple more effects, maybe add them underneath this blue to make it look really nice. Add that beautiful blue effect, and we can put them underneath the other stitches or on top as for now, because ultimately these will go underneath all of these blues. This is one of my favorite things to do with embroidery because this is how we really add the artistic look to it, is by adding all of these run stitches. It's very random. You can't really generate them the way that you would a fill stitch. So it's really, really nice. It's adding such a nice and personalized style to it. So I'm just going really fast at this point because all I'm doing is left clicking back and forth to add this texture of the second darkest blue. You can see as I zoom out, it's just all over the place, which is awesome. So I think that's pretty good. I'm going to press enter. And again, that looks weird because it's green, but let's select it. So let's go to our sequence view, and I'm going to grab that leaf green. I'm going to select the second darkest one, which would be 48, electric blue, and we're gonna bring it all the way to the top on top of the ultramarine. And there we go. That looks really, really nice. The whole design is really starting to take shape. And if I were to disable the backdrop, that's kind of what it looks like right now, which is a little awkward, but let's bring up back the backdrop and let's add the one more color that's missing. And that is going to be the super light blue that we have here in the background as well as here in the foreground. So for that, let's go back to our widget tool and let's select a fill. For the fill, once again, we're going to switch it to 0.6 millimeter density, and I'm going to grab a square. Let's grab this super light blue over here, which is 46, and I'm going to click from around the middle of the rectangle. I'm going to click and drag to the other side around the middle, somewhere around that, and I'm going to let go. Now we have to put our inclination points. So as you can see, as you go around the edge of the rectangle or the square that you just made using the fill tool, I'm going to click and drag from one side to the other and then press enter and then enter once again. That looks a little awkward, and it looks like that because it's at the top of everything, and as well it's a square. So let's take off 3D for now. I'm going to grab my select tool, and I'm going to, the same way in which we did the rectangle at the beginning of the tutorial, I'm going to grab it from here and bring it down, and then I'm going to grab it from here and bring it up. And then again, because of push and pull compensation, I don't really need to have these all the way to the top, and these I just want to meet somewhere around the middle. All right, I think that's pretty good. So let's bring back the 3D, and now all we have to do is grab that light blue and bring it all the way to the top so it embroiders first. But we can't just leave it like that. Let's actually add some underlays to it, because remember, we took off the underlays from the recipe. So while selecting that light blue, which we just created, let's next go to our properties, and the density is at 0.6. I could make it 0.7 if I wanted to. The stitch length is currently at 4 millimeters. Let's leave it at 0.6. And we're gonna go to our underlays. I'm going to add a parallel underlay to give it a stability, and the density, let's bring it up to 4 because we don't need it to be too dense. And let's just add a contour as well so that we add a nice outline to the base to keep it stable. Perfect. So those will be the two that we create, and there we go. We now have an awesome sky and water. But did you think we were done? Because we actually have one more step, and this is one of my favorite ones. So let's grab our fill tool once again, but instead of using a rectangle, let's switch it back to fast draw. Now, before I even do anything, let me just go back to my sequence view, and I'm going to select them all because I don't want to accidentally touch any of them. So we're just going to lock them by clicking the lock button. And now let's add some really awesome effects. Let's grab our white color, but I guess I'll choose something else for now. And here we go. I'm going to press left click to put my first point down. Let's work on the sky first. Left click. And I'm just going to go right in between this dark blue that we just created. So let's do left click all around and make sure that we go somewhere around in the center or just a little bit overlapped on that border. So let's press enter. And here we go. I'm just going to put my inclination points, enter. That's fine. This doesn't really matter. Let's select that. And now we're going to add an awesome effect. So underneath down here, you can see all of the extra effects. You can see there's gradient fill. There's also color blend fill, but the one that I want to use is this one, which is called convert to wave gradient fill. So let's click on that and see what happens. Oh man, instantly it added this wave looking gradient, and I think it looks amazing. But we're gonna take it a step further and add some editing to it. So I'm going to press Q on my keyboard, or you can go up here to your shape edit and click path edit, and you will see that there are a couple of lines. I'm just taking off the 3D so it's easier for you guys to see. Now these nodes you can edit, and as you can see, the gradient will change with it. So let's almost mimic a little bit of a sky like so. We'll do it so that it's spawning from the top and almost curving into the bottom like so. Let's start modifying it even further. Maybe we'll do a little bit of a wave, like if there's a wind happening like so. Not gonna exaggerate too much, maybe just move them ever so slightly. I think I'm quite happy with that for now. Now let's do the ocean next. So I'm going to press on my widget tool once again, fill tool. I'm just going to make sure that I have my smart join enabled so they automatically connect. And let's press left click again. I'm going underneath the border, and then I'm going to press left click once again right there. Press enter and enter because that doesn't really matter. We're going to change the effect of it. Let me take off the 3D, and I'm just going to select that second shape that we created, which is this other fill right here. Let's do the same thing, convert to wave gradient fill. So let's click on that, and whoa, That looks super crazy. It's definitely wavy and it's a nice gradient look to it. I'm going to press Q on it once again, or you can go to shape edit, path edit, and let's just edit a couple of these points because I kind of want this wave to go from the bottom and finish somewhere here at the top. Now you can use these nodes to change the angle of it. So I'm changing it a little bit. I'm adding some of these fills like so, just exaggerating it and giving that extra look to it. Let's bring back the 3D. And honestly, this design just looks like a mess. It's really hard to understand what's happening, but that's because of the color red. So let's fix some of this stuff right now. I'm going to go under my sequence view, and you can see that it's all red because the steel path is red and these are red. Let's select the two effects that we just created, and I think I'm going to change them to white. Perfect. So now they're white color. You can see they're right here, and let's add them on top of the base. So the first one that we created was the light blue, which is the fill. We're going to grab the two whites and we're going to drag and drop them right underneath that blue. So here we go. We have the blue fill, then we have the gradients we just created, then it's going to be the second darkest blue, and then the darkest blue. Let's collapse all of them, that way you can see what's happening. And then last we have the white because it is the highlights which we created. So I think I'm just gonna grab this red and change it to a dark blue to make it even nice. Now we only have 4 colors on this design. We added some really in-depth gradients. This design is going to pop when we finish embroidering it. Now let's press Shift R so we can bring up our redraw, and you can bring up the redraw up here as well besides the millimeters and inches. And let's press play. You can see, let me just disable the backdrop. Let's see, it's creating the fill first because that's what we want, the base. That's awesome. And then it's going to create those effects which we just made, the wave effects. Look at those gradients, look at those waves, it looks amazing. Then the second darkest blue, which is awesome. The darkest navy blue with all of its effects, and then it's going to do the white highlights, which is the foam, and then at last it's going to do the border, which is awesome. Before we finish, one more thing, I do want to add an effect to this border, and I just want to add an underlay to it because I see that it only has a contour and I want it to have a zigzag as well. So let's select that ultramarine blue border and let's go to our properties, and for the border I'm just going to add a parallel so that it has some zigzags. That's pretty much it. So now we're done. I'm going to unclick, and here we go. That design is now done. Now, before we go and send it to our embroidery machine, the most important thing to do is to save our design. So let's click Save As, and I'm going to select the wave right here because that's my folder. I'm going to save this design as wave. Make sure to save it as a JDX because that is your native file format, which is going to allow you to reopen this design, resize it, as well as change a lot of settings that you need to. Let's click Save. And now we're going to save it one more time, but we're going to do so in our embroidery file format, which for me is a DST for Tajima. But if you have a brother machine, you might do PES, a Singer, XXX, or a Melco EXP, depending on your embroidery machine. So I'm just going to export it as my Tajima and click Save. And now we can take this design onto the embroidery machine, see what it looks like. So I'll catch you guys in a second. And that is the end of the wave design. It looks so nice, natural, and it brings such a calming sense to the embroidery. There are no bulletproof stitches anywhere, and it's ready to be embroidered wherever you want. Inner Circle members, don't forget to download your lesson files below. Not a member yet? Join the Inner Circle and get access to exclusive bonuses, hands-on training, and everything you need to master embroidery digitizing. Click the link in the description to get started. Want to keep learning? Check out these tutorials next and take your embroidery skills even further.